Now, this first story happened just recently in my home country of New Zealand, in my old neck of the woods, Christchurch in the South Island. In late March 2026, Lionel Horne would become the victim of an unusually ironic twist of fate, dying just days before what would have been his birthday, and as birthdays go, this one was shaping up to be rather disappointing. Shortly after midnight on Tuesday the 24th of March 2026, Orion, an electricity provider, received word of a major power outage affecting hundreds of homes across the Christchurch suburb of Burwood. Protection systems had automatically cut power to more than 500 properties, leaving large parts of the surrounding area without power and alerting crews that something had gone wrong. Large parts of Burwood fell within what was known as Christchurch's Red Zone. The Red Zone was created following the infamous Christchurch earthquakes of 2010 and 2011 after severe land damage and liquefaction left some areas considered too damaged to build on. Over the following years, thousands of homes were demolished and removed, transforming what had once been residential neighbourhoods into large stretches of empty land scattered across eastern Christchurch, forbidden to live on or build in, essentially creating a modern-day ghost town. Copper wire theft and power infrastructure tampering, including within the abandoned sections of the Red Zone, had been an ongoing problem for Christchurch, and prompted authorities to repeatedly warn the public about the dangers of live wires and high-voltage equipment. However, you can't always save people from themselves. So, as it would turn out, the source of the power outage on this night was traced to a transformer kiosk on Brooker Avenue, located within the abandoned area of the Christchurch Red Zone. An Orion network operator was dispatched to investigate the cause of the outage, but upon arriving at the transformer kiosk, they instead discovered the source of the outage lying beside it. It was Lionel Horne, critically injured beside the live transformer. Emergency services were called to the scene. However, there was an immediate problem. The transformer itself was still live, preventing responders from reaching him. By the time the power was disconnected and first responders could reach him, sadly, Mr. Horne had died. According to investigators, he had been attempting to retrieve copper wire from the transformer. Whatever the copper may have been worth, however, he ultimately paid a far higher price. Romania's Carpathian Mountains attract tourists from around the world for fairly obvious reasons. The scenery is great, the roads are famous among motorcyclists, and depending on where you are, there's a good chance of encountering one of Europe's largest predators. Bear encounters in Romania are definitely not rare. According to authorities, at least 30 people have died in a bear attack over the past 2 decades, and upward of 500 bears are killed in Romania each year. For 49-year-old Italian motorist Omar Farang-Zin, however, this apparently sounded more like a tourism brochure than a warning. An airport worker in Italy, he was known among friends as a passionate traveller and a friendly person. He had travelled to Romania on a motorcycling adventure to ride the famous Trans-Făgărașan Road through the mountains. His first day out riding had gone well. Encountering roadside bears throughout the ride, he had posted photos and videos of himself getting up close to them. The following day, he encountered some more bears. According to Romanian authorities, near a sign telling tourists not to approach or feed bears, he stopped, approached, and tried to feed bears. What happened next was rather unfortunate. According to an article in The Independent, he was attacked and dragged 262 feet down a ravine. Tourists witnessing the event alerted emergency services. It took rescuers an hour and a half to find his body. Recovering his phone afterward, investigators discovered what may have been some of the least reassuring final photos imaginable, and protective motorcycle equipment had made little difference. Tragically, the bear involved was later euthanized, and as you can imagine, Some of the online public reaction was brutally unsympathetic. What should have been a memorable motorbike ride through the mountains had unfortunately become a Meals on Wheels situation. At over 18,000 feet above sea level, one climber approaching the summit of Mount Nama made a rather unfortunate discovery that, even if you remove your safety rope to take a photo, gravity remains attached. Located within China's Sichuan province, in the snow-covered Gongga mountain range, sits the 18,330 feet high Mount Nama. Reaching the summit requires you to cross steep, high-altitude terrain where ropes, crampons, ice axes, and good preparation are essential. On the 25th of September 2025, a 31-year-old Chinese man named Hong was part of a hiking group attempting to reach the summit of Mount Nama. According to relatives, this was his first time visiting the mountain, and like the others around him, reaching this point had already involved days of travel, hiking through mountain valleys, establishing camps at high altitude, and slowly making their way toward the summit. After days of effort, the group was finally nearing the top. As they approached the top, however, according to the others, Hong unclipped his rope so he could take a photo near the peak. Unfortunately, he lost his footing and tripped. Captured in a video that went viral, he's seen sliding down the mountainside in what was technically a descent, but not the planned one. He slid around 660 feet before coming to a stop out of sight. Authorities made it to him, but he had died from the injuries suffered during the fall. Sadly, as it turned out, safety equipment tends to work best when you're actually using it. By the early 1900s, aviation was taking off. Unfortunately, so were pilots. And unlike modern military aircraft, if something went wrong at altitude back then, your emergency evacuation procedure was mostly just falling. One man believed he had the solution. His name was Franz Reichelt. Born in Austria-Hungary before moving to Paris, Reichelt wasn't an engineer, an aviator, or even a scientist. He was a tailor, and apparently a good one. By 1912, his business was booming. However, he had become obsessed with creating something that could save pilots. Basically, an early adopter to the wearable parachute. The concept was simple. Instead of a bulky parachute they had to carry, pilots would simply wear one. Dummy after dummy wearing his invention was thrown from buildings, and dummy after dummy slammed into the ground. He even tried wearing it himself from lower heights, with one attempt ending with a broken leg. For most people, they might have just given up. Instead of realizing his design lacked the aerodynamics and surface area to work, he reasoned that the parachute just needed more time to deploy. So, naturally, he booked the Eiffel Tower with approval to test one of his dummies. On the 4th of February 1912, he arrived at the Eiffel Tower. However, instead of a dummy, it was he who was wearing the ridiculous-looking parachute. Pointing out it hadn't actually worked yet, his friends and even the security guards tried to talk him out of it. Franz, however, remained convinced. "I want to try the experiment myself and without trickery. You are going to see how my 72 kilos and my parachute will give your arguments the most decisive of denials." This would later prove to be an unfortunate choice of wording. At 8:22 a.m., 187 feet up on the lower platform of the Eiffel Tower, he climbed onto a stool placed on top of a table, hesitated for a moment, then jumped. Now the video of the jump is on YouTube, but to avoid an instant R18 banhammer, I won't show it here. But instead of the parachute working, it basically folded around him and he hit the frozen ground below hard. And instead of proving his critics wrong, made a dent in the ground approximately 15 centimeters deep and would be remembered as the flying tailor. The falling tailor might have been more accurate. That's all for today's video. If you found value in it, I'd love it if you subscribed and joined me for the next one. To watch another of my Darwin Award videos, you can click the link on screen. And as always, thanks for watching.